why they've been doing all they can to try to keep Trump off the ballot in over 32 states, all of the court cases and lawsuits and everything that the media is throwing at him. The reason why they're doing that is because you may agree or disagree with his decisions or his policies or the way that he talks about things, but he is he is not beholden to those same uh, establishment interests.
Tulsi Gabbard stuns on the Modern Wisdom show as she exposes who really runs this country. Chris Williamson of the Modern Wisdom podcast asked Tulsi a bunch of tough questions, and Tulsi, as always, answers them really well as she drops truth bombs on the show. Let's give this a watch.
President Biden has not been the guy calling the shots. He has not been the guy making the decisions, nor has it been Kamala Harris, for that matter, nor will it be if she is elected president. It is this cabal of, the Democrat elite, the woke warmongers, made up of the likes of Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama and, Tony Blinken and Jake Sullivan and, people who are in the military industrial complex, people who profit from us being in a constant state of war. It is those in the administrative state and the national security state who derive more authorities and ability to take away our liberty when we are in a heightened state of crisis or war. It is their friends and billionaires and people in media who all derive their power from being able to have a figurehead that essentially they can control. And the most troubling part about there's so many things wrong with this, of course, but really at the most fundamental level, you look at our country is the oldest democracy in the world, but the reality of a truly functioning and thriving democracy that has brought to life the vision that our founders had for us, that we really have a government of, by, and for the people, and that we have the ability and responsibility, for that matter, to ensure that the government we have only exists with the consent of the governed. That becomes very hard to do, to hold people accountable when the person that you voted for is certainly not the one making the decisions.
How long has that been the case? Was it ever the case that the president ran the country? When was the inflection point?
I don't know that there's one specific. I mean, there has been, as personalities come in and shift here and there. I would say the answer to that has probably changed. But in the election that we are facing here very shortly in the United States, um, it's our opportunity to hit the reset button. And, however people feel about the choices and the options that we have, and they've changed a little bit recently, but really it's only the faces that have changed. The stakes have not changed. And the choices between the Democrat elite, and I've been saying this for months, like, hey guys, don't, because it's like, oh, is Biden going to stay or is he going to go? And who's they going to replace him? Is it Gavin? Is it all of these different theories? They make for good chatter, I guess, on cable news. But I've been telling people all along, don't be distracted. You take one horse out, you put another horse in, you've got the same people who are running the show. And it is between the Democrat elite, will be Kamala Harris on the ballot, and the those calling the shots behind the scenes continuing to remain in power versus Donald Trump, who has a record of, I mean, the reason why they're doing all they can to destroy him is because he won't bend the knee to this Washington establishment, which is made up of people in both political parties, by the way.
What makes you think?
I mean, I legitimately think they could just have a broom as president and everything would run completely the same, completely no changes whatsoever, because I don't think the president is really running the country. I mean, we've all had that feeling that whoever was president wasn't really controlling the country. We've kind of already all known that. So to hear Tulsi Gabbard pretty much confirm this, it's nice to hear, I gotta say.
That a Trump presidency would be any more inoculated against this nefarious behind-the-scenes control than the one that we have at the moment. Surely you're just, if the people out front don't make any difference because it's people behind the scenes that are changing, then what makes Trump any better than what we've got at the moment?
It's not that anyone who's put out front doesn't make a difference. It is specific to in this world that we're living in now, specific to uh, President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris. And the reason why they've been doing all they can to try to keep Trump off the ballot in over 32 states, all of the court cases and lawsuits and everything that the media is throwing at him, the reason why they're doing that is because you may agree or disagree with his decisions or his policies or the way that he talks about things, but he is he is not beholden to those same uh, establishment interests that so many of these establishment politicians are. And so, he's not going in and saying, "Oh gosh, well, I gotta do what this person says, or I gotta do what that person says." I think oftentimes even his own staff doesn't know what decision he's gonna make or what position, he'll put forward. And that is to me, that's the clear choice. You have a choice between those who believe that government knows better for us than we do, that, their power is more important than our freedom, that their power in many cases derives from being in a constant state of war that undermines our national security, versus Trump, who has the ability to, and frankly, the backbone to say, yeah, no, I'm not going to go down that road, or we're going to take a different path, or we shouldn't be in unnecessary counterproductive regime change wars. We should focus on investing in our country and try to work towards a future of peace and freedom and prosperity.
If that's correct, if it is the case that this sort of limp, flaccid Democratic Party has permitted people behind the scenes to come and basically run, puppeteer the people that are out front, that's happened very quickly because it was not that long ago that we had the very guy that you're saying will sanitize this thing in office. So is it going to then take a long time for that to be cleaned up? And also, how do we know that some of this didn't already exist?
It did already exist.
Okay.
It did already exist. Because the party elite itself has been very powerful for a long time. So that hasn't come around very quickly. Um, and I think one of the problems when President Trump was elected last time was, and he's talked about this himself. He came in and he'd never worked in Washington before, and he had ended up with a bunch of people around him who were a part of this establishment, this Washington
Do
establishment.
you think he didn't really have that much of a plan? Do you think it was a surprise to him that he got in some ways?
I don't know for sure, but it certainly seemed
Felt
that
like
way.
that.
Yeah, and I mean, there were and the it's interesting because the conversations that I'm hearing coming from even establishment Republicans right now, are very similar to the ones that I heard in 2016 when Trump was elected, which was, "Okay, like, we gotta like balance the scales in their words by surrounding Trump with people who hold completely opposing views than he does to try to mitigate what they view as the quote unquote threat that he poses to not the country."
Who is it that's saying that we need to surround him?
Oh, I mean, it's basically like the neocon warmongers even within the Republican Party. So
And what do they
it's
see as the position he holds that they're trying to counterbalance
that
with?
and he's been pretty vocal about this. Like he's like, "No, we're not gonna wage more stupid wars. And we're gonna put America first," in his words. And we will achieve that through by peace through strength.
Who wants war and why?
They would be shocked by how many people do. And they won't say, "I want war," or "I like to see more people dead." Of course, they won't use those words, but there are politicians who are beholden to the big defense contractors who are making billions and trillions of dollars, and they are their political donors and their supporters and their friends, and ultimately, it's those politicians whose knee-jerk reaction to any challenge or situation in the world, instead of choosing diplomacy and seeing war as the last resort once you've exhausted all other means,
Hmm.
understanding how costly it is both in lives and in taxpayer dollars, It's just, "Hey, we gotta go and punish this bad guy, topple this regime, wage this modern day siege through economic sanctions and warfare," all of the tools that they have at their disposal without thinking through what the cost and consequences of those actions and policies are.
Presumably on the ground and also economically, domestically too.
Both.
Well, yeah, a lot of these politicians, it's not like they're going to have anyone close to them that actually mean anything to them involved in these wars or in these countries that get bombed or the wars that these men and women get sent off to. It's not like they're going to have anyone close to them fighting in these wars. So they're not going to have any personal attachment. It's just they're not going to have any personal attachment to any of the casualties of war. So it makes it easier for them to make these decisions. What do you guys think about that? Comment section. Sound off in the comments below. If you enjoy content like this, subscribe to my channel. Let's get back to it.
It seems, are these people...
And it's, by the way, it's not reflective of, I think, especially over these last 20 plus years, the vast majority of Americans, regardless of political party, are sick and tired of this. So their view is not reflective. They're not just like, oh, well, this is what the quote unquote people want. It is ultimately, it goes back to this kind of cabal of power that they're trying to hold on to.
Do you think that those people, I struggle to find or meet people that are genuinely evil. There's people that have got goals and then they're kind of risky and frivolous en route toward getting those goals. And you think, this is just collateral damage. Who really cares? I'm getting my backhander from Raytheon or whoever the fuck. But it seems surprising to me that someone would think, I want to go to war. So do you think that these people that are pushing for it genuinely believe that it's in the best interests of the country? Have they been able to gaslight themselves, this Stockholm syndrome from whoever is sort of continuing to fund them? Or is it something a little bit more malicious? Are they actually sort of trying to land grab or this sort of odd power game that I imagine it feels powerful for you to be America and for you to have a foothold here and have a foothold there? Have you got any idea what kind of motivates these people?
I think they tell themselves whatever they need to tell themselves to sleep at night. But as someone who's been, I still serve in the Army today. I've been deployed to war zones in different parts of the world. Seeing and experiencing firsthand the harsh ugliness and realities of war and the costs. The people who are so quick to go to war and see that as the first response rather than the last, number one, they don't have any excuse. I don't believe everybody should, it's mandatory to serve in them. I don't advocate for that. But if you are in a position to make these decisions about war and peace, you need to be very responsible and do your due diligence to actually truly understand what the consequences of those decisions will be.
Might be worth a quick visit to the front lines, maybe.
They do those all the time for photo ops. I saw this while I was deployed, and I've seen a bunch even when I was in Congress for 8 years where, they'll go and they'll do like, we'll stop here in this war zone for 12 hours and hop off the private plane and take some quick photos and, wear your flak vest and the helmet, for the picture. But it's, it's
Visually impressive, but like
I
realistically
suppose.
unimpressive.
Yeah, I mean, it looks really goofy to me, but for them, it tells a good
Perhaps
story.
pick apart where they are.
I've heard that, like, I've been to Iraq 27 times. It's like, okay, like,
The air-conditioned jet wasn't
and
good.
yet, even those who are saying this are some of the very same people who are saying, like, we should just go bomb this country to smithereens. Like, okay, like, there's maybe a real big problem that we're dealing with here. But is that really the right answer? Is that the best answer? What happens as the second and third and fourth order of effects after we do what you're proposing? What will the costs and consequences be? Again, in human lives and economy and in all of these other ramifications that a responsible leader should be considering before you go and advocate for such a serious thing.
So it seems like you've got Democratic Party not happy with Trump generally. Some factions of the Republican Party not happy with Trump. So it seems like,
And Nikki Haley, just to put a name to Nikki Haley, is is one of kind of the figureheads of that faction within the Republican Party.
Mm. So Nikki Haley is driving forward this neocon
Yeah, very much so.
warmongering.
Yeah.
How come she's still there?
Because there are people with a lot of money, uh, who make money from that position or supporting that position. And they see again, I don't know what they tell themselves to be able to sleep at night and be comfortable with what they're doing,
Mm.
but, they have convinced themselves that this is the way things should be.
That's what makes me think that it is self-conviction or self-conviction as opposed to leading this sort of double life where you know that it's wrong and then you go out front, because the level of certainty that you need to be able to step out in front of the camera and we should do this, we need to do that. You go home and you drink yourself into a hole, because there would be, for me, the, just straight up multiple personality disorder that I'd have to go through would break my brain in half. I don't think that
Because you're a good person.
well, other people would disagree, but yeah, I know what you mean. Like, it's just
But it's like, okay, well, I get what you're driving at, and like, okay, well, how do you define someone who was evil or driven by evil
mhm.
intent? I would argue that even if there's not like some Jekyll and Hyde situation going on, uh, I would define that evil intent as someone who cares more about their position, their political position, or their power, or their influence,
Mm.
and I definitely in certain cases, and this is why Kamala Harris would be so dangerous as president and commander in chief, because I have no doubt in my mind she would immediately feel the need to exert strength and to
Mm.
assert her position and prove that she is a truly strong and powerful commander in chief of the United States of America's military. And what better way to do that? What more effective way to do that than to actually use our military and go out and commit an act of war?
So
I don't think all of these politicians start off as bad people. I think a lot of them do, but I think some of them start off as at least decent people. Regular people who are looking to make some kind of difference. But once they gain power, what's that saying? Absolute power corrupts. So once they get that power, they get corrupted, and not only that too, but they're around a whole bunch of other people. They're in a complete environment where they're just engrossed in this power, where they're just engulfed in this corruption.
sort of need to prove yourself makes you quite easy to manipulate in some ways.
Yes.
It makes you fragile.
Yes, especially when you have so many interests, and this is not new. This is, you heard Eisenhower warn about the military industrial complex and their influence and their cozy relationship with members of Congress. You go back to President John F. Kennedy and his brother Bobby Kennedy, who were battling against even four-star generals and civilians who were beating the war drum, saying, go to war, go to war, go to war. President Kennedy's compelling speech at American University about peace and the hard work that it takes towards peace was the pushback against that, and that doesn't only exist today. It's far more powerful today than even it was back then.
Going back to what you mentioned before, which was the fact that everybody knew behind the scenes, but nobody was talking about out front, which was the declining mental health of Biden.
Yeah.
Just how widespread was that internally, do you think?
I mean, it was impossible to ignore.
But if you
Impossible to
compartmentalize
ignore.
him, keep him away, we don't let him out front, that's a cheap fake edit, that's a whatever.
I think that's the challenge, though, is even as they did all of that, um, it wasn't enough to try to hide his both physical and mental decline. Um, I was with him on the debate stage in 2020 when I was running for president, and I've known Joe Biden for a very long time. I was friends with his son, who also served in the Army National Guard, and um, you know, people have asked me, like, "Did you see signs of this back in 2020?" No. I mean, it was the same Joe Biden that I'd known for many, many years, and I think recently someone did a side by side of his performance on the debate stage in 2020 versus now,
Mhm.
and how significant that difference is. So even hearing Kamala Harris and the people around him and, Morning Joe on MSNBC say, "Oh, he's never been sharper and he's in the best form he's ever been in his life." Like, anybody who knows him now and certainly has known him over the years, knew that it was all crap.
We've all seen
Everyone can see that he was on a cognitive decline. You don't have to know him personally to see that there is a mental decline there. Even back in 2020, there were signs of it showing. People were saying it back then. Yes, it has gotten worse. It's more prominent now, so prominent that the media can no longer deny it, that the Democrats had to switch him out for Kamala Harris. But it was there in 2020 as well. You don't got to know him personally in order to see that.
photos of before term and after term. I mean, even
That's true.
Obama,
Oh,
who
yeah.
entered as this sort of vibrant,
Mhm.
handsome black guy, and he comes out and you go, that's 2 decades in 8 years. Congratulations.
Full job.
Yep, of course it is.
Every president that served. So, obviously, when you're in your late 70s, just imagine the toll
Ruthless.
that
So
it
this is
takes.
something about to make one of the most unpopular cases that the internet's going to hear this year. Every time that I've seen this sort of commentary around Biden's decline, it's made me feel sad. It's made me feel
Yes.
uncomfortable as I watch this, and for 2 reasons. First one is the one that everybody kind of agrees with, which is it's an older man who's sort of being forced by this organization to be the tip of the spear when he's evidently not capable of doing it, and blah, blah, blah. But the other side is this is the twilight of his career.
Yeah.
And people remember the thing that you left them with. Their
Mhm.
lasting impression is often the one that kind of continues through. And, you can make whatever criticisms you want about what he's actually done or said throughout his career. I don't really know that much. But I know the way that people socially interpret signals
Yeah.
from others. And to think that you've got this guy, how long has he been? Like 5 decades
Yeah.
or something? He's been in it forever.
I think he was the youngest US senator ever elected when he got elected to the US Senate.
Right. And now he's the oldest president ever.
Yeah.
So this guy's like the parentheses of US government.
Yes.
Right? The
all
alpha
he's
and
done.
the fucking omega.
Yeah.
And to think, doesn't matter what you say, that was a very, very long career, culminating in you getting to the pinnacle of this. And that being this sort of really awful lingering aftertaste
Yeah.
that everybody gets. And I go, that makes me sad. That makes me feel
Yeah.
sad for somebody.
I don't think that's unpopular at all. I think it's just, I mean, as humans who have empathy,
Not much of that in political discourse.
sadly not. And that's been I think that has been one of the sad things that I've seen is all of the different clips and the footage that's out there that gets replayed over and over and over again, and just the mocking and the ridicule. It is unfortunate that is where today's political discourse has gotten, rather than just recognizing exactly what you've said. Like, it is sad to see any person
Mm.
in this state, especially on a global stage. The thing is, I mean, Joe Biden's run for president a few times before he got elected. It's what he's always wanted. This is the pinnacle of what he has always wanted to be, to achieve that title, to be the president of the United States. And so, ultimately, he's the guy who made the decision to run. I have no doubt in my mind that he firmly, even against other people maybe telling him he shouldn't run for reelection, Joe Biden is well known to be a very stubborn man,
Mm.
a very stubborn man. So the fact that he chose to run, he chose to stay, and he chose to run for reelection, uh, I'm sure I know there are people around him who benefited from him staying, but that was his decision.
That's why so few people are going to give him any sympathy for what's happened, because you already know that you're in decline. You already
Yes.
know, and if this is true, if it is the case that he wants to run it, it's not Jill, marionetting,
I'm sure she's got a role to play in it as well.
marionetting him behind the scenes or whatever.
Without a doubt, Joe Biden did not want to leave office. He wanted to stay in power. I mean, that's what happens. Who's going to want to be willing to give up that power? Of course he was forced out. So Tulsi Gabbard, absolutely right on this, absolutely right on everything. She has made some fantastic points. I personally see a bright future for her. Specifically, I see another successful presidential run should she ever try to run again. But what do you guys think about that? If you guys like Tulsi Gabbard, I have a whole playlist for you in the upper left-hand corner. I got more videos for you to check out.